Alright guys, let us now work on uploading pictures. So back to our assistant, let us select storage and click on this link. So I'll have to do all the way from step 1. I think the project is out of sync, but no problem. If you see, like, if you had connected but step 1 tells you to connect again, just go ahead and do it so that it can sync with the backend. So this is what it tells us. It's already connected and I just have to sync that and I get my take. Now I can add cloud storage and accept the changes. As this is connecting, let's go over to our browser and select storage from the console. We'll click on Get Started. We'll click Next and Done. Alright, and here we go. Here's our storage area, I suppose we can call it. We'll do all the work from the code, but in any case, you can, just as we could directly add data in our database, we can directly add files using this button, and we can also create folders using this button. Before anything though, as you're probably used to right now, let's go over to the Rules tab. So logically, we don't want anyone uploading any pictures without being logged in, so we're going to write the rules to reflect that. And actually that's the default, so allow read and write if request.auth is not equals to null, so that's fine. It's already set that up for us, which is very good. Alright then, so in that case we can go back to our Android Studio and I can see that it's finished doing its work. Dependencies have been set up, and now we can actually start the work of storing and uploading files. So let me close this for now because there's still some work we have to do before we get to that point. So here in add entry, I can now get rid of this, and instead what we want to do when the person clicks add and when the add entry method runs is we want to go into our device's storage and actually fetch a file, whichever image it is that the user has chosen. So first things first, we aren't by default allowed to go into a phone storage, which makes sense. There could be sensitive things there, so we need to ask for permission. So very simply, users permission, and it's actually the first one that's highlighted here, read external storage, and I'll close that there. And while I'm here, I'll even do this, users permission internet. So far we've been accessing the internet and it's not been giving us any problem, but once we get to production, if this isn't there, it won't work. Okay, back to main activity. I'll get rid of this. Now within the app, as you've seen so far, to go from one activity to another, we make use of an intent. Now to go from this application out of it and into the phone itself, it's still the same thing. We still make use of an intent. You can call it intent is equals to new intent. Now here's where it gets a bit different. We won't put anything in the brackets, and we will immediately say intent.setType image/star, and then intent.setAction, and we want it to get content, so we say intent.action get content, and then finally we start activity for result intent, and then we need to put a request code which we will call image pick. Okay, so let's create this variable before we go on. and we'll set it to 9. Alright, so that's done. Now let's go over to, let's get out of this method and create another method called on activity result. We aren't actually creating it, sorry, I misspoke. We are overriding it. So just start typing on activity result and press enter for the first thing that shows up, and you'll get this. A bit of an explanation before I continue. So we are starting an activity for result. We are getting out of the app, we're going into the gallery so that we can pick an image. Once we pick that image, we will get back to the app. We'll come back to this same activity that sent us out searching. And when that happens, this method will run. So whatever code you write in here is what's going to take place by default immediately after you come back from selecting your image. So what do we want to take place after we come back from selecting our image? We want to upload. So we can start working on that now, and before I do, we need something to see. So now we can do a bit of layout work. What I'd like is when we come back from selecting our image, the picture that we've seen is showing up on a dialog instead of a whole activity. So it'll be on a dialog that will have input fields for them to now write a title and some body text for their diary entry. Okay, so let's create that dialog. Right click here, new. Oh, sorry, I've right clicked the wrong place once again. It's layout. Right click on layout, new, layout resource file. And we'll call it diary dialog. Okay, so this dialog will be very simple. It will just have an image view and 2 text views and a button, of course, to begin with. Later, if we feel like we need anything else, we'll go ahead and add that. So first I can put that image view. I'll put width as match parent, and height I'll put as 0 dp to begin with. We'll see what will happen in just a moment. And then I'll add another attribute, spacing attribute called weight. So weight will be 1, and close that. I'll give it an ID, image, and I'll leave it without a default picture for now, no problem, I can put that later. And then below it, let's have another linear layout. Width will be match parent, height will be 0 dp once again, and then that same attribute, weight 1. I'll close that. Let's also give it orientation, vertical. And now let's take a look at what happens. So as you can see from the blue outline, this is the linear layout, and if I click this, this is the image view. They are precisely half and half of the screen. So what this layout weight does is it takes the total weights in the layout in this case being this main linear layout. So it will add up all the weights of the attributes inside. So this is 1 and 1 equals 2. And then if this one says that its weight is 1, it will take that total and give it that fraction, so 1 over 2. If we had a third one, copy and paste, it would then be thirds, because it's now 1 out of 3, 1 out of 3 each, and so on and so forth. So that's a good tool to have in your repertoire as far as design is concerned. Alright, so the linear layout. Here we can have our edit text. Width is match parent, height is wrap content, ID will be title, and hint can simply be title. That's fine for now. Close it there. I'll give it some padding, 10 dp, as well as margin, (10 dp), so it's not hugging the sides. Oh, let me change this to a capital T, and I can leave it as that for now. I'm going to highlight it and press Ctrl D to duplicate. Change this to body, and this to body. And then since I don't want them to think that they're only allowed to write one line of their body, I'm gonna make this larger. So I'll say lines is equals to 10, maybe 8. Yes. All right. Finally, I'll give this the button. So button width is 200 dp, height is wrap content, ID will be save, and the text will also be save. Next, in the inner linear layout, I'm going to put the gravity attribute, not the layout gravity, but the gravity, and put it as center horizontal so that my elements are in the center. Okay, so we'll do a bit more decoration later just to make it look a little nicer, but this is enough for now. Let's go back to our main activity, and here is where we were on activity result. So as I said, what I want is, as soon as you come back from the add entry, it should show that image on the gravity, on the dialog, sorry. It should show the image on the dialog, and then the user writes in the title, writes in the body. Okay, so first thing is to create the dialog. So dialog is equals to new dialog context. Dialog.set content view. And then we set what we just made, r.layout.diary dialog. And then from here we just initialize we just connect the widgets as if it were an activity, almost as if it were an activity. So there are only 4 of them. An image view, is equals to dialog.findViewById, r.id.image. This is the only difference with if we're doing it for an activity. You just add the dialog and then you put a dot. So I'll duplicate this 4 times. The next one will be an edit text. Title is equals to this dot title. The next one is also an edit text, this time called body, r.id.body, and then finally the button. And the button is called save, r.id.save. Simple as that. Okay, so I think I would like to space this out a bit, there, and there. So next thing I'll do is an if statement. If this request code that we're given on our activity result, if that request code is equal to this integer that we created, image pic, and result code is equal to result okay, then I want to dialog dot show. Okay, a bit of explanation. So request code will check will check which image request was just done. So as you can imagine, we can request as many images as we want, but we need to differentiate them. So that's why we need this integer. So first we check if the request code is equals to that integer, and then we check whether the result code is equals to result okay, which means there are no errors. And if those two checks are met, then we can show our dialog. So that's actually what I want to do, so that this video doesn't run too long, because there's still quite a bit to do. Let's just check whether we'll at least see our dialog before we do anything else. Alright, here it is. So let's try our button. We're going to click the plus, and now we're in our gallery, so that's worked wonderful. I'm going to click any random picture. It doesn't really matter, because we'll just go back, and there we go. We are back in our app, and the dialog has showed, which means this if statement of ours ran. It saw that there were no errors, and it showed the dialog. Of course, I'm going to make this dialog much bigger than this, but we'll do that, no problem. It doesn't at this point UX can take a back UI, sorry, at this point UI can take a back seat, at least, so that we can do the logic. Alright then, let's do the next thing in the next video.